Okay, welcome back to the morning session of the Saturday at PyCon 2013. We've got a panel session up next, which is going to be introduced by Asheesh Laroia. The topic is scaling community diversity outreach. So please make the panel welcome.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces in the room. Wow, there's such an echo. Okay, so I'm Asheesh Laroia. With Jessica, we started the Boston Python workshop for women and their friends. A year ago, I gave a talk about that with just me talking, and 2 years ago, Jessica and I talked about it. And this year, there's 4 people talking about different outreach events they've worked on that are similar. So I hope next year we'll have 16, and so on. This panel is called Web Scale Diversity Outreach, How Sharding Really Improves the Diversity of Your Community. And you'll see that through the 4 different panelists. So respectively, we have Jessica McKellar of the Boston Python workshop, Daniel Choi of Railsbridge Boston, Dana Bauer of PyStar Philly, and Naomi Cedar of the Chicago Python workshop. And there's lots of other diversity outreach workshops that people work on that we just didn't have time to fit into the panel, and lots of other people who've worked on these workshops that are here at PyCon. So Jessica, if you want to start. Oh, I guess I should quickly structurally say, that we'll do about 5-minute lightning talks by each of these people, and then open it up to Q&A with the audience.
Thank you, Asheesh. So, how do I make it?
Oh, slides, please.
Thanks. Thank you. All right, so I come from the Boston Python workshop, and I'm also an organizer for the Boston Python user group under which that workshop runs. And I guess we're sort of the grandmother in this room of outreach, and you'll hear a lot more about ways that we've been able to work with other cities and other user groups to do great outreach initiatives this past year. But so the Boston Python workshop, it is a free, volunteer-run, 2-day intro workshop for women and their friends. It has served as a model for the past 2 years for programming outreach events in various other Python user groups and other language user groups across the United States. And one of the things that we've done is written a lot of custom content to provide a high-quality intro event for beginners that has all been put online under a permissive Creative Commons license and has been used to wondrous effect by a lot of other groups, and that's been very exciting. For a little bit of history on the Boston Python workshop, for the past 2 years, we've been running 7 intro events and follow-up project nights that I'll talk more about in a bit. We've also written the content for and run an intermediate Python workshop. We've had over 350 women come through the pipeline and emerge as alums of this program. We've cultivated a large and wonderful volunteer base, mostly of women from the local programming and open source communities who have really stepped up to teach and to develop content and to become awesome active members of the larger Python community. Sort of fundamental to the Boston Python workshop model is that we run not just a single-shot intro event, but we are running a pipeline of events as part of the local user group. So it starts with this intro event, focusing on outreach to women. But we make sure that as you go through these workshops, you always have a clear step for what happens next. So you go through this intro event, and we make sure that you have a nice, welcome, encouraging place at an unstructured project night that follows these workshops. So the project night is an opportunity to continue learning and practicing the stuff that you learned at the intro workshop while eating free pizza and meeting the rest of the user group and becoming comfortable as part of the broader community. And at that point, we find that people are pretty well hooked. They're well equipped to attend regular user group events. And from there, it's my job and Ned's job to wrangle them for giving lightning talks and helping at the user group and coming back as helpers at the workshops themselves. And before you know it, you have folks who were taking baby steps with these intro workshops here at PyCon and presenting talks and changing careers into software engineering and a lot of other really great effects that start with this pipeline idea, starting with this intro workshop focusing on women. So we've run 7 of these events. We've had hundreds of people go through the workshop, and we've seen a pretty phenomenal impact. So prior to running these events, so 2 years ago, if you walked into a Boston Python event, it would typically be 0 to 2% women. So effectively no women. And that was the main motivation for running these events. We wanted to most directly change the texture of the local user group. And what has happened over the past 2 years is after running a couple of these workshops, we hit 15% women at a typical user group event, and we've sustained that level for the past 2 years. So through this model of running recurring intro events as part of a pipeline, as part of the user group, we have seen really strong sustained results in the community, and that's really what we're going for, sustained engagement by underrepresented groups. A side effect of this that we maybe didn't anticipate when we started doing this is that when you run diversity outreach events, you are actually sending a signal to lots of people. So even though you have directly a bunch of women coming through this pipeline into the Boston Python user group, you're also telling everyone else in the community that you value and welcome beginners, and that you are here to encourage and support people of all programming backgrounds and all backgrounds. And so a side effect of running these intro workshops is that the population of the user group really exploded over the past 2 years. In fact, our size quadrupled, and we have since become the largest Python user group in the world. And we attribute a lot of that success to running these intro events. All of these people are not women who are beginners, but they're also women who are experts, and musicians, and scientists, and people who hadn't thought about the Boston Python user group being a great place for them until they got the signal from us that we valued and wanted them to be a part of it. We've also been able to, with the support of the Python Software Foundation, grants through the Python Software Foundation and the Anita Borg Institute, help other user groups in the US develop, bootstrap their own version of these intro workshops focusing on women. And you're going to hear a lot more about exactly that in just a couple of seconds. But so we've become a lot bigger, a lot better, a lot more diverse. It's been a lot more fun. We have a lot of really great personal success stories that I can't go into here, but if you talk to us afterwards, women who have gotten software engineering jobs that were the seed of that learning started at the workshops, and moms who have picked up programming with their kids, and a lot of other really great stories. So it's been a very gratifying experience for me personally, as well as for the user group as a whole. So my message to you is, if you're thinking about outreach, and as you hear about them talking, as you hear from them as they talk about it, think about doing diversity outreach as part of a pipeline, as part of an existing community, and that way you'll get sustained results that impact not only you locally, but also the broader Python community.
Thanks, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Choi. I am from Boston. I'm actually a Rubyist. Yay. I never could have expected to stand up here at PyCon, not only because I'm a Rubyist, but I've never done outreach before, but it's funny how life throws a curve at you. Just a little bit about me. I love Vim so much that I'm a borderline obsessive. I'm so obsessed that I really got annoyed every day that I had to check my email through this interface. So I wrote a program called vmail, which let me do all my email in Vim, and then I was happy. Okay, so here I'm representing Railsbridge Boston. What we do is, like Jessica said with Boston Python Workshop, is that we run introductory workshops for women to give them the best possible, the friendliest, warmest, most encouraging introduction to programming that we can possibly give in 2 days. It all started pretty recently, May 18th, 2012. It was on the Boston Ruby mailing list. Suddenly a discussion thread flared up where everyone started talking about how we were not friendly enough to beginners, how we didn't have any women coming to the Boston RB monthly meetings, and we really wanted to do something about it. But the fact was, 2 years earlier, we had tried. We formed an outreach committee, we gave people responsibilities, we told people to come up with a plan, but nothing ever gelled together, and basically it crashed and burned. 2012, suddenly the planets came into alignment, and the reason is because on YouTube, we found this video. This is actually Asheesh and Jessica's video from last year at PyCon, where they talked about their diversity outreach effort at Boston Python and how they became much more friendly to beginners and women and started this whole new tone and dynamic for their community. And that was exactly what we were looking for. And not only did they show us that it could be done, they showed exactly how they could do it in this video. So all of you should definitely see this. It lays out the game plan. So the first element was Boston Ruby project nights. We did have a hack night, which was sort of unfriendly, where everyone just came into a room and stared at their computers and didn't talk to each other. But following Jessica and Asheesh's model, we decided to advertise it as a beginner-friendly project night where people helped each other. You know, you come, you ask questions, you can help people out, you can try to mentor people on the spot, and that turned out to be a really great success. The energy level was tremendous. It was something we had never experienced before. Here's some pictures. There's me. Okay, and then we tried something bigger. We tried a women's workshop. I was very intimidated to do this. There were a lot of moving parts. You have to recruit TAs, you have to get sponsors, you have to recruit students, you have to make sure the budget is right for the amount of food, depending on the number of attendees. You have to make sure Wi-Fi is there. Anything can go wrong and make it a disaster. And in fact, we had a couple of close calls. But it turned out to work out fine. The first one, we had 44 beginners, including 36 women. We had 17 fantastic teaching assistants who were totally dedicated, including 6 people who lectured on various topics in web development and Ruby. Here's one of our lecturers. It was at the Harvard Law School. It was a very swanky, swanky place. There are some students. And I love this picture because we welcome people who were interested in learning Ruby even later in their careers, you know, trying to make a career transition. The guy on the right, his name's Gary. He had programmed in like these ancient languages like Fortran and stuff, and now he wanted to retool. And I thought that was great. And there was a classroom. Then we decided to try to do this every 3 months. So the next one was in November. We planned a slightly bigger workshop, and this was at MIT. 60 beginners, 47 of them women, 25 teaching assistants, and we're starting to build this army of volunteers. Here's what the room looked like. See the happiness on their faces as they learn how to program. I gotta say, this picture is really great for me. I mean, this is really the core of the operation, and it probably will be if you try to run these things. The teaching assistants make or break the workshop. I mean, they have to be friendly, they have to know what they're talking about, and they have to really help beginners, and it has to show. And we're really lucky to have these sorts of people. Here they are introducing themselves to the class. This is usually the first moment of comic relief, you know, when people talk about themselves and say something weird. Okay. Here are the stickers we got. We decided to get laptop stickers, which are a great idea because they're cheap and you can get them fast. Here's the curriculum that we go through, and we actually made a little pie chart, dynamically updating pie chart graph that showed how many people in the class completed each lesson. Here's the app we have the students build. It's a very simple to-do app, but it basically illustrates all the main principles of web development. And here we actually ended up using it to vote on the beer towers we're going to order at the after party. Okay, so we did another workshop in January. Just some pictures. Again, the happiness of learning programming. And then March, the most recent one we did, our last one. Okay, I'm almost done. And the twist was we had a gunman scare. And I'm sure some of you heard this on the news. A gunman was reportedly on campus that morning, and we had to cancel the event. But we quickly regrouped. We rescheduled for the next weekend. Most of the people came back, and we managed to do it. The attendees all really appreciate it, and I think you'll find out that too. I mean, here's the rating graphs from our surveys, and here's like a representative quote from the feedback form. They genuinely appreciate the fact that we took our time out to try to introduce them to something that's very intimidating to a lot of them, and in a way that's friendly and warm. You know, that's really the key. So I'd just like to thank you guys, Python. You really led the way here, and you helped us do this. Thank you.
Great. Hi, I'm Dana Bauer. I'm a co-organizer of the Philadelphia Python user group, and I run a series of workshops for women under the name PyStar Philly. Do we have any Philly people out here? Yay! One of our instructors is here. So we're very much a child of the Boston Python workshop. In fact, it's just an entire export of their program. But we also collaborate quite a bit with PyLadies and the Girl Develop It group in Philadelphia. So we've got a network of folks who really support our efforts and help us run these workshops. We got started in 2011 mostly because I was looking for more support. I was a Python scripter using Python scripting to make maps. I'm a geographer, and I wanted to learn more, and I wanted a really friendly group. So I reached out a little bit, and immediately Lucas and Amanda, who are running PyStar workshops in San Francisco and Minneapolis, got me going. And I had personal visits from Asheesh and Jessica and some of their friends to get the Boston Python workshop model running in Philadelphia. We've been really lucky to have great sponsors, to attract a great community, and pretty much everything they said about the success in Boston has happened here in Philly, although maybe on a smaller scale. The Philadelphia Python user group membership has gone from about 300 to almost 800 in 18 months, in large part because of our outreach efforts. But probably the best part of this is that we've been able to put together a really fabulous group of instructors and volunteers to keep the workshop going. I've been doing most of the organizing, but no way would I be able to sustain this without the help of these really great women and men who continue to volunteer and come out to these events. It kind of blows my mind that people keep coming and helping and teaching. It's really great. So since 2011, we've run 5 workshops, and these are primarily for women, although we usually get about 10 to 15% men, and all of them tell us that they really like this kind of learning environment. It's really friendly and welcoming and helpful. We run about 10 project nights, and again, we open most of these up to the entire Python user group, although we do have special events that are just for women. We have 130 graduates of our workshop, and this is something that I'm really proud of. And because we use the Boston model and run them under the umbrella of the user group, they're all members of the larger Python community in Philadelphia. So they get information about our regular monthly speaker series, about special events, discounts on books. You know, they're immediately part of the Python community, and it gives them the chance to do quite a bit of networking. So as I said before, we really were supported by the Boston Python workshop staff, and that's an amazing model for getting this kind of workshop started in your own city. And Jessica and one of her co-organizers, Christine, were really generous to give us a lot of their time and energy. They came to Philadelphia twice or 3 times. They really came and helped us, and not only did they teach portions of the workshop, but they taught our instructors how to do the workshop, and that was really incredible. So it works the same way as the other models you've just heard. We do a day-and-a-half event, and it's mostly project-based. I probably should have found a picture of smiling people, but you know, there is like a lot of fierce concentration throughout the event, and it's not easy for a lot of folks, but most of them find it really rewarding. We also do a ton of collaboration with other groups in Philly. As I mentioned, Girl Develop It. We've been really active with the Code for America Brigade in Philly. And this last event we had was probably the most diverse tech event I've seen anywhere. It actually kind of looked like Philly. About 1/3 of the people there were women, about 1/3 were African American, and there was a lot of great energy in the room. This particular event was kind of a civic hacking 101. So I really got going on this, and one of my goals was to try to get a lot of moms into the Python community, especially folks who had been home with their kids and were looking for a way back into the workforce. So our events are starting to become more child-friendly. This is actually my daughter. She doesn't code in Python yet, but she has her little bits circuits, and she was giving demos at a hackathon. We're also pretty friendly, you know. Babies come to our events, and for me, this is one of the best things possible. Okay. Thank you, all.
Hello, my name is Naomi Cedar. I'm one of the 3 core organizers for the Chicago Python Workshop. Again, we've modeled our curriculum almost entirely on the scheme that you already heard about, so I won't really talk about that a whole lot. First of all, the 3 of us, Sheila Miguez is sort of the mastermind of the group, and she's sitting right out here. You're going to see her picture in a second when we go to the slides. I am sort of the lead teacher. Bonnie King, who also is one of the core people, is sort of our operations person who makes sure we get everything done on the day. We also have a number of other people who help us out. We have done so far just 2 events, so we're actually the baby sister of this group. We've had about 60 people go through, and of that, I would say about 50 of those were women. It was probably about 10 men. So we're just getting started. I personally I was a teacher for 25 years. I'm the organizer of the PyCon, or the originator of the PyCon poster session. This year I organized the Education Summit, so I've always had interest in doing this sort of thing. Our condition right now is that we have gotten a good start. Basically, we have created a team now that knows how to put on the events. To be honest, our first one was a little bit rough. Everyone bore with us, but we're much better at that now. We have a growing pool of people who are interested. Our meetup mailing list is now up to about 150 people who track our event, and that continues to grow, so we're starting to get some traction there. And all of our students have been very happy with the day and a half that they spent with us. So we're still at the point where we have a lot more possibilities rather than actually getting any huge track record. We also have, because of that, we're still working on some issues of how we want to track our success, how we want to understand what that is. I think that's an area that we really need to understand. We do a survey, and that's wonderfully favorable. We always fill up, so that's a good deal. But we are having, I think, some issues working on trying to get people to continue. We do have office hours, weekly office hours, and we don't get as much attendance for those as we would like. We think that's probably partly because of a location. And to be honest, we've moved our location around as we've done these things. If we could manage to find a stable location or a pair of locations that we could use both for office hours and for our teaching, I think that would be a very good thing. That's something that we're still working on. One thing we've found is that plenty of people are willing to give us a venue, but it's either too small, or it doesn't have Wi-Fi, or it doesn't have this, or it's closed on Saturdays. So all of those challenges, I think, are things that you need to deal with, and they all kind of, I would say, are probably specific to your local terrain, your local environment. So that's one thing that we're still working on. We also are looking, I think, to get more user group involvement. I would say we're not yet at the point where we have that pipeline complete. So we really need to work more with a user group in order to get support for project nights and in order to sort of complete that part of the chain. Some other things that we've been thinking about, we're looking for a way to come up with starting points for people after they've done the main project but don't have a specific question they want to ask. Those people aren't likely to come in for an ask your question open office hours, but if we had some things for them to do, they might well show up and benefit from that. So that's one thing that we've been talking about. I think the other thing that we've been interested in, and we have no answers at all, this came up in the Education Summit as well, I think, or was sort of touched on tangentially, is the question of economic diversity. And that is, most of the people that come to our workshops so far, they may be students, they may not have a ton of money, but they have their own laptop, they have the free time to take off for a day and a half and not worry about childcare or a second weekend job or various things like that. So we're starting to talk to some local groups. There's a group in Chicago called Women Employed to see if we can't actually increase that particular aspect of our diversity. Okay. So that's basically what we've been talking about. Again, we were able to jumpstart our program fairly quickly because we could build on the work that the Chicago Python Workshop, or the Boston Python Workshop had done. Asheesh is very good at giving you extra resources. You can have a wiki on OpenHatch, many things. So really, that's what helped us get started. Thank you.
So we have just about 5 minutes left. I want to quickly cycle through these photos to show you how great Chicago is, and then leave this slide up. We'll take questions, but we're also doing OpenHatch office hours right after this talk in the expo hall. So if you want to keep talking with these people, we'll all be at the OpenHatch booth. These are all OpenHatch affiliated events, and we're happy to tell you more about that, but we want to hear from you.
So if you have a question, come up to the microphone in the aisle, and I'll pass it to the panelists. The microphone here to the panelists.
All right, hi, my name is Anthony Skopatz, and I'm with NumFocus Incorporated. And so my basic question is, we're really trying to increase diversity at SciPy 2013, right? And if you just look at the numbers, right, PyCon is between sort of 11 and 15% maybe, and SciPy historically has been much lower than that at sort of the 5 to 7% level. And I'm not really, I don't know, I'm grasping for ideas in terms of the scientific programming community, like what you can do, or that pipeline seems a lot longer and more complicated.
Sure. So my stock answer to questions like this is that the best way to encourage participation by women or anyone, any particular group in your events, is to reach out to individuals specifically. So if you want to see more women coming to SciPy conferences as speakers, do homework and figure out all of the fantastic women's candidate speakers and encourage them to apply one-on-one. The same goes for reaching out to specific women and specific women outreach groups for attendees. But one-on-one outreach is the best way to encourage involvement. And that's definitely a huge part of why PyCon has done such a great job in the past couple of years of having such a diverse speakership.
So at our workshops in Philly, we've had a number of women who are coming from various universities in different scientific and engineering disciplines, physicists, astronomers, geographers, linguistic students. And I think that these are all people who might be interested in SciPy if they knew more about it. So one thing you could do is work with people like us so that we can maybe work with people to develop proposals for SciPy. I think if we were talking to you about it and you had some suggestions, we might be able to get folks in our workshops and project nights really thinking about that. They're probably just not aware of it, but they might very, very well be interested.
Okay.
Hi, assuming that you have a full-time job and kids, how much of your extracurricular time do you devote to this sort of an effort?
I have no wife or kids, and that's one of the reasons I was assigned this task. I actually tried to find a woman in our Ruby group to become the leader, but the three that were active were mothers with young kids, so they were happy to let me lead it, and it was a lot of time and work, but it was definitely worth it. It was very rewarding.
Well, and so lest he scare you off from wanting to do great diversity outreach in your communities, so the trick to making this easy and sustainable is to be really good about developing a workshop in a box that you can unbox for the next time. So that's part of why all of our material is online. It's all online under permissive license, and I copy and paste a couple of things for each new workshop, but the content is all there, and the prep work is all already sort of set in stone for that. So once you've developed a good curriculum and a good model, expend the extra little bit of effort to package it up a little bit, and then it's easy to unroll for the next time.
One quick thought about that too is that, as I understand it, Daniel will step down as the lead Railsbridge Boston organizer for the workshop events, and that's been handed off to somebody else. And similarly, I don't even live in Boston anymore. So you can find someone else to prototype it, to do more work, and then have you pick it up.
So I think we've got time for just the three of you who are already up here, sorry. So next question.
So I'm kind of trying to build a new community around documentation, and we're having our first conference, and we have like a code of conduct, and we're doing kind of all the cargo culting of how to make it accepting and open and whatnot. But do you have any kind of, so it's kind of a two-part question of like specific advice for making it welcoming, like when people get there and just kind of like in person at the event, and then also how you kind of keep the momentum going when you're not geologically like local, because we have a bunch of people coming to these conferences and they're going to be from lots of different places, and if they're kind of get together as a group and maybe online or anything that would be kind of in that realm, a little bit easier to kind of keep people involved in a community.
So one of the best things about being at conferences and being at sprints and being involved with user groups and getting to interact with beginners in all of those events is that beginners keep you really honest about being good about documentation, being good about being welcoming, being clear about your mission. So what I would do is I would round up a bunch of beginners and ask them how they perceive your event and just get their feedback, because they will do a phenomenal job of telling you what is intimidating, what context they don't actually have that you're assuming they have, and all that good stuff. We learned so much from the first the Boston Python workshops are for absolute beginners, so not people with prior programming experience. And we discovered running the first event that we had made so many assumptions about what people know. So ask your beginners, and I think they'll give you a ton of really good advice.
We'll make one more question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, there's a lot of great advice about how to structure an environment and event, but I don't know how to promote it outside of the community that's already so lacking in diversity that I can't find the people I'm trying to make more welcoming for.
Have you already created the event yet?
I ran Pi Carolinas last year, and I'm working on the next one this fall, and I just don't know how to promote that outside of my local group that is fairly closed.
So what we found for the Boston Python workshop, it was this kind of intriguing, difficult situation where you want to attract dozens or scores of women and their friends to this new event, but there's nobody on the meetup list. How will you possibly get attendees? But as many of you, I think, who know me know, we filled up that workshop in under 2 days, and we did it because what we created was an opportunity. It was a learning opportunity that was rare, and it was targeted at people who were underrepresented in the community, which meant people who knew those people thought, who is the woman in my life, or the 1,000 women in my life who are coworkers, who I can send this to? So I think making it an opportunity is the big thing.
I think I can also say, based on what I did for the Education Summit, if you can find even one contact, the first thing you ask after you get them to think about attending your event is, who else do you know anywhere who might be interested in this? And if you can build on that, you can get a network effect that actually does get you a little bit of traction.
I think we need to wrap up now.
So we'll have office hours at the Open Hatch booth?
Yes, so if you're interested in speaking to our panelists, get along to the Open Hatch booth, which is over in the Expo Hall. That's it, all we have time for, so please thank the panelists. Okay, I think we get started in about 5 minutes' time with Selena, so.